Warning, MF Uncensored contains adult language and discussion. Listener discretion is advised.
We're a couple of misfits. We're a couple of misfits. What's the matter with misfits? That's where we fit in. We're not Duffy and Dilly. Don't go around willy-nilly. Seems to us kind of silly.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to MF Uncensored. Don't forget, if you guys are listening to us on the go, you could find us on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, basically anywhere you get your podcast. You can also find more of our content on our website, themisfitfaction.com. There you find links to not only this show, but some of our other shows, like the Multiverse Fancast and Cinematic Adventures. And speaking of Cinematic Adventures, you know him from that show, and you know him from your mom's date book. It's Sean. Sean, how are you today?
I'm just wonderful, Paul. How are you?
I am doing all right. Thank you for asking. It's almost like you're a nice guy.
Yeah, try to be. I try to be.
I thought you were just going to say yeah and just leave it like, yeah. And then just done. Dead silence. Which I would not edit out because we both know how much I love to edit the podcasts. At this point, I just kind of look at the editing software and I'm just kind of like, do I want to? Not going to lie, today's Cinematic Adventures that got released, I was editing it at like 5 o'clock in the morning and I was like, do I really need to edit it? I could just throw it out there. Nobody will notice. Yeah.
Oh, 5 o'clock. That sounds like fun.
You were awake too.
I was already at work.
You were already at work. I know you have the worst work schedule. Do you ever miss Babies R Us?
No.
Those were the days. All right, so Sean has no clue what today's topic is.
Never do.
That's not true.
Yeah, for the most part, you always like to surprise with these.
For this show, yes. For this show, I do. I did catch Ronnie on Multiverse the other day, though, but he got into it super quick.
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
So, Sean, you are a co-host of Cinematic Adventures, which is a movie about a podcast about movies. Figured it out. I had to switch it around. I'm so tired that happens. Now, Sean's losing his shit right now laughing at me, so I'm just going to keep talking and hoping to provide entertainment to all of our listeners.
Yes, I am a co-host of a podcast about movies or a movie about podcasts, whichever you prefer.
I think if they ever were to do a movie about podcasts, we could be the stars. We could be extras. We could wait out in the parking lot. I got there eventually. We'd be out in the parking lot waiting patiently with our microphone.
Excuse me, can we have a part in said movie?
It's about podcasts, you say, pushes up headphones. Anyway, so Sean has an aficionado or an efficiency. I tried to be fancy. It didn't work. Has an efficiency for movies. He probably knows movies better than I do, arguably. So I thought now is a great time because there are some differences between Sean and I. Mostly looks, but whatever. I can't help it. I'm just so handsome. Sean, you're handsome too. Don't worry. I didn't mean that.
That's all right.
Sean, come back. Sean. It didn't work as well when you did it. I can actually just move away from the microphone. But anyway, so there are one big difference between Sean and I. And that is our taste in movies. Most of the time it aligns, and we look for the same things in our movies. However, Sean has more of a proficiency for movies of a certain bygone era, and Paul has more of a proficiency for the modern movie. So today's discussion is going to be the golden age of films, or the I don't know I'm trying to think of a good. Let's just go with the classic movies versus the modern movie landscape.
Well, what's your definition of modern?
I would say modern. Let's go with 90s, anything from
90s and to present.
90s to present. Let's say that as modern because, in all honesty, that is when we were alive.
Okay.
So modern is relative. I think it can be very relative. So let's say here we'll do some examples. You got modern movies. You got big movies like Inception, The Social Network, Parasite, like all these movies that have come out that have just global fanfare and all that stuff. But then you have like your classics like Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, stuff like that. Now, we are not going to say that one is bad because there are bad movies in every genre, but we're going to not debate, but discuss the more classic cinema versus the modern cinema. What people look for I'm having trouble talking, Sean. Stop laughing at me. If you're gonna laugh, at least do it into the microphone so people can hear, because otherwise I gotta take out the Joaquin Phoenix does it better, but anyway.
That's
Fake,
fair.
fake laugh.
At least the Academy Award-winning actor. I would assume he would do it better.
Is he though? Is he?
Is he an Academy Award-winning actor?
Is he though? I thought he was starting his rap career. Do you remember that when he did the method acting thing? He went on, who did he go on?
On Letterman. I don't know if he did anyone else. I know he did Letterman.
Yeah, that was a big thing at the time.
Letterman was in on the joke. He found it hysterical.
Oh yeah, I think
it was very Andy Kaufman. It was exactly what Andy Kaufman would do back in the 80s.
Absolutely. So let's first start the impact and the influence of films. Okay, you have your classic films, and then you have your modern films. Which do you think would have the higher cultural impact, the lasting, not only in the moment but also the staying power? So obviously, let's look at. I'm going to pick 3 films from the classic era that I would like you to discuss their cultural impact. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
The Godfather, the first Star Wars movie, and Psycho. Ooh, all right. So you pick any one of those 3 to start with, and you talk about how those as classic movies have influenced filmmaking and how they have such incredible staying power.
Well, I'll start with Psycho because that movie is arguably the grandfather of the slasher film. It is, if you are a fan of Hitchcock, it is such a different movie for him because right before that, he's done Rear Window, North by Northwest, To Catch these very good-looking, movies that are like in good, locations, very colorful, very, beautiful actors and actresses in them, very over-the-top storylines with a lot of suspense. Then you get this movie, Psycho. It's based off a book. It's gritty. It's black and white. It's low budget. It's about a guy who murders this girl for no reason at all. It is just for 1960. 1960.
That's wild.
Is such a. I mean, the uproar from like the movie critics at the time. They were calling it filth. They were calling it, how could this auteur make this like just really like seedy movie?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously it became this huge thing, terrifying terror for this day. And it's now considered, depending on who you ask, it's considered, I think, one of Hitchcock's greatest films. I don't think it's his best movie. I think it's probably his top 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it is the grandfather of the slasher film. It's the movie that took horror out of science fiction, out of Gothic castles in like Transylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Like we had never seen a murder in that way on movies from like just a regular person. It wasn't a mythological creature killing people. It was a normal boy next door who is just this
psycho,
absolute psycho. I mean, to coin a better word. And it just was such a culture shock for the time. Unbelievable. And that movie changed cinema. Mm-hmm. I will believe that movie was the beginning of the change in cinema that led to where we went, like The Exorcist or Halloween. We would never have gotten those movies if it had not been for Psycho back at that time.
All right, very well said, Sean. Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unlike me, who's having trouble with the words right now.
Yeah, cinema.
Cinematic adventures. But anyway, different podcast. Now let's switch gears. Star Wars, the original Star Wars: A New Hope.
Oh, Star Wars. So, it's always fun to look back to see exactly what George Lucas intended that movie to be. He wanted that movie to be a love letter to the serials of the 30s and 40s, the really cheap, low budget science fiction movies. And, I think he knew what he was doing, but I don't think he, in a way, also knew what he was doing, what he was bringing to the world.
There is
with
no
visual
way,
effects.
like, and also it's one thing, like every content creator, whatever you want to call it, authors, artists, anybody that's making something to be put out into the world, they want the best for it. Like we make podcasts, and I tell my wife always goes, well, if you could quit your job and just do something for a living, like what would you do? I said, I would do podcasting. This is what I love to do. But I can't make a fortune off it. But we all hope to. We all hope to be like the Joe Rogan show and all these big shows making millions of dollars. But for George Lucas to not only put something out that nobody really believed in, that's why Fox doesn't give away their merchandising rights no more. Like that nobody had faith in, and suddenly it explodes into a cultural phenomenon that's still being so heavily invested in the modern era. It's rare. There are very few franchises that have gone from a classic type cinema level to still modernly relevant. And Star Wars and James Bond are really the only ones that come to mind.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I can't think of another franchise that has that kind of
franchise. Yeah, I think you're good.
I mean, Indiana Jones could have. Stupid monkeys.
Well, don't even talk about that. Talk about the last one. The last one was just as bad. Might even have been worse.
Shia LaBeouf. But anyway.
I actually would watch Kingdom of the Crystal Skull before watching Dial of Destiny again.
See, I have to watch Dial of Destiny because I haven't seen it yet.
That's how let down I was by then.
I'm surprised that's not streaming by now. Time of recording, it's still not streaming.
I think it's coming soon.
Probably.
Because it's not in theaters anymore, I don't think.
Yeah. So...
But they did announce that they're bringing Indiana Jones to Disney World to Animal Kingdom.
I saw that. That's pretty exciting. All right, and then the last one that I mentioned was The Godfather.
Godfather is another one of those. It's you know, I don't know if you watched the Paramount Plus miniseries, The Offer. It was just about the backstory of the making of The Godfather. The Godfather is one of those things where it's just everything worked. Everything came together in a chaotic way. You take this book that was just going up the charts of the best books of the year, and Paramount at the time was like on the verge of bankruptcy, on the verge of being sold. They went out and they bought the rights to a lot of really popular books, hoping that they could change the fortunes of the studio by making movie versions of these books. A la The Godfather, a la Love Story, those were their two big saviors. And you go to and at that time, movies about the mafia were like really poorly done. Obvious American actors, really doing poor Italian impersonations. You had like shows like the Untouchables with these really bad actors doing really bad Italian, stuff. So you hire a guy, Francis Ford Coppola, who is basically, I mean, in a way, I wouldn't call it blackmailed into making the movie, but his company was on the verge of bankruptcy. He needed the money. Yeah. And he didn't want to work for Hollywood. He didn't want to work for a major motion picture studio. He wanted to be independent, but he needed the money, and that was a quick cash grab for him. You take a chance on a guy like Marlon Brando, who in 1972 probably was thought to be a little over the hill as an actor. Yeah. Was very, pain in the butt to movie studios, didn't want to deal with him. And you get him, and he gives probably one of the top 10 greatest performances of all time. You bring in these unknown actors, who are probably more big on stage than on screen. Al Pacino in his first ever movie, James Caan, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton. I mean, these were unknowns to the cinema world. And you make this just absolute picture perfect film. I mean, The Godfather is one of those movies that you could say is a perfect movie.
Absolutely.
It's well done on every music, script, direction, acting, all of that. The art direction. I mean, it's obviously set in the 30s. It looks it. It's gritty. It's not demeaning to the Italian heritage of at all. But what it does is it takes killers and you root for them.
It's family. I mean, it was the original Fast and Furious.
Pretty much. And it took, Francis Ford Coppola himself, he was like, I'm going to make this a movie about family and, the business of that family. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, in a way, the book was different from that, but that's the one contribution I think Coppola made to the story was this is about family. This is about this, group of family members who are, going to be at each other's sides through thick and thin. And, you see that in obviously the evolution of the Al Pacino character and what he becomes. But that movie is so good. I love that movie.
All right, so let's jump to the modern era now, where modern blockbusters are now expected to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. It is more about the almighty.
Like their third day.
It is more about the almighty dollar at this point than quality filmmaking, for the most part. Yeah. There are plenty of gems. So let's talk 3 movies.
Can I just jump in on you real quick?
Yeah, jump in.
I've been watching this documentary on Max about Warner Brothers and how Warner Brothers was this, studio that would take chances on these movies, and most of it back in the late 60s and 70s. I mean, The Exorcist. Who would have done that?
Oh, I know, right?
Dog Day Afternoon, Deliverance, the first Superman movie. I mean, we look at it now going like, oh, that's a no doubter, but back then they were like, that's a gamble. We don't know if this is going to work or not. So that was the big thing about Hollywood, especially back in the late 60s and 70s, was these gritty movies, these taking gambles on all these ideas that back in the 40s and 50s you'd be like, we're not doing that, and not at all.
All right, so let's talk the modern era. I'm going to pick 3 movies, and we will discuss Titanic, The Lion King, and the first Avengers movie.
Okay.
So I wanted to be very careful with the comic book movies, because obviously the problem with very modern movies is the franchising issue, and we'll talk about that. That is a topic for this episode. But it's hard to do the franchise movies and pick the one gem, like, because you could say this Avengers movie is better than this one, but this one made more money, so we should talk about so it gets complicated fast. I wanted to put Avengers Endgame on there, but that's a very subjective choice. Anyway, so The Lion King, Titanic, and the first Avengers movie. So Titanic rolls around. James Cameron, and we'll talk about James Cameron is probably the best, at least top 3 modern directors right now.
For the limited amount of stuff he's done over the last 30 years, in 30 years he's made 4 movies.
It's wild.
4 movies. And all 4, 3 of those movies are in the top 10 of highest grossing movies of all time. And 2 of them were the top grossing movie of all time for multiple years. Like Titanic obviously was number 1 for 15 years. And then Avatar was number 1 for, I think, till Avengers.
And then they did all the stupid re-releases, and then they just kind of went after each other. It was actually a lot of fun. That was like one of the best movie grudge matches of all time.
That was funny.
I wanted to also just to mess with it, but I wanted to pick a standalone film. I wanted to pick an animated one, and I wanted to pick a franchise one. So, you got Titanic. Titanic was an epic when it came out.
Epic. And it's kind of a drawback to the epics of the 50s. It's also a drawback to the disaster films of the 70s. Big budget, big cast, just epic sets, stunts, all that stuff. It's kind of like a combination of all of that in one movie.
Remember how Titanic came in 2 boxes? It was, or two tapes.
2 tapes in 1 box. Yeah, that's when you knew the movie was long.
That sounds dirty. Then. 2 tapes, 1 box. Yeah, that sounds dirty.
I remember the grocery store, the A&P, was giving away if you spent $100 in groceries, you would get Titanic for free.
Wow, for value.
Seriously.
Back then, yeah, when tapes were only $12 a tape. But
back then, tapes were
expensive. I know, I'm busting chops. But for me, like, I still remember going to see that movie in theaters with my mother and sister.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters with my parents too.
Yeah, and then I remember the intermission.
I don't remember the intermission.
Oh, we did. There was an intermission. Like, it was like a 10-minute intermission for you to like go get snacks and go to the bathroom and all that stuff. Now, I still think the most boss move they could have ever done was for the tapes. It should have cut right before you see Kate Winslet naked. because then everybody would be like, well, I gotta see it. You gotta put in that second tape. It's like the episode of Family Guy where he gets the therapy tapes, and he has to keep ordering the next one.
Got the tape, I got the tape, I got the tape.
This is only for the men. But anyway, so let's jump to The Lion King, because nothing says inappropriate sex scenes and then a Disney movie. So The Lion King rolls around. Now, The Lion King was huge. I still consider it probably top tier Disney movie. It is up there, and it's super rewatchable. And I think that the best thing about a lot of these movies is that they have a certain rewatchability. Either they're stuck in a certain time period, like The Godfather, Titanic, or they don't rely on the outside world to tell their story.
Yeah, and Lion King is in that group of Disney animated movies that's obviously now known as the Disney Renaissance. It's, bringing Disney back from its, crappy animation films. Well, in quotations, crappy animation films. I still like them. Of the 70s, 80s, and then, up to Little Mermaid was their first one that was part of that.
Part of that world? Part of that world?
Part of that world, yes. Good one there. But Lion King was kind of like the culmination of it. It was the success of Little Mermaid, the success of Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and then it all just kind of bubbled up into the Lion King. The funny thing about Lion King is it was the first movie that they split up the animators on.
Yes.
I think animators were given a choice. They were like, you can either work on Lion King or you can work on Pocahontas. And Pocahontas was like the hot movie. That's the movie like Disney was really banking on.
It was a good movie.
Lion King was like kind of an afterthought. They had no idea what they had, no idea what it was going to be. So it's like, it's all the B people. It's all the...
They obviously couldn't feel the love. They couldn't feel the love tonight.
No, they couldn't. And that movie, I didn't like Lion King as much as a kid as I do now. I liked Aladdin. I liked Beauty and the Beast. Lion King it was good, but I didn't watch it as religiously as I watched the others.
I liked Aladdin and I liked Lion King. Beauty and the Beast was like lower tier. It's still a fantastic movie. Like can't even argue it. But yeah, for me, I was more of a Aladdin than Lion King.
Lion King is just so good, so well done. The music is fantastic. The score is unbelievable.
On point.
Hans Zimmer,
yeah. So let's and then we have the Avengers, the movie that launched the franchise craze that we're currently in.
Yes,
it is the movie that showed that it could work. That doing a crossover to this level, they have done crossovers are nothing new. You go all the way back. You got Abbott and Costello fighting Frankenstein, like crossovers and stuff like that. Yeah, crossovers were they're not a new thing. But the Avengers was the first one to really be like, hey, look at how much money we can make. And they put out a quality content. Like, the first Avengers movie is fantastic. I love the first Avengers movie. If it's on, I'll throw it on.
I like it too. It's a solid movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's again, as we've beaten this horse dead a million times, they had a plan. They knew what they were doing. It was, let's introduce this character, this character, this character, and they're all going to team up eventually in Avengers. It was a 5-year period, between Iron Man and Avengers 1, and it was a perfectly laid out plan, and it just worked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could have failed. Iron Man could have been a crappy movie, and they would have been like, crap, all right, what do we do now? Do we still make we had the Hulk coming out later in the summer. I mean, that'll be good. But do we go ahead with Thor? Do we go ahead with Captain America? Do we recast Iron Man? What do we do?
Oh, imagine. Wow.
Everything worked out perfectly for them to the point where you could argue straight through till Endgame. They had really well done movies. You can cherry pick ones that are less superior than others, but I think that stretch of movies is quality and a lot of good entertainment in there. What's come after, I will say, is not good in my opinion, but hopefully that'll change sooner rather than later.
We shall see. It's a shame. So let's talk about the evolution of filming techniques and the evolution of storytelling. Now, you got your classic movies that relied a lot more on we need a solid script first. And then you have the more modern movies where it's like, we have a solid idea, we're going to build the effects around it, and then fine-tune the script.
Yeah.
Do you think that it's... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, do you think it's evidenced in the quality of the films?
Well, I mean, you can go back to the old Hollywood, and it was a factory system. I mean, you had actors under contract, you had writers under contract, you had directors under contract. So it was kind of like, how do we get this director, this writer, this actor all in a movie? Let's find a script that works. Mm-hmm. That type of thing. The actors got their freedom in late 40s into the 50s, where they could choose which studio they wanted to work for. So the studio system was like basically dead by the late 50s. And that's kind of where we are now. There's really no studio system anymore. It's more just contracts with producers and, that type of stuff. But you could see it in the older movies, especially like from mid 30s to the 60s, where you had the code, why am I blanking on the name of it?
You can do this.
Code of ethics.
Sure.
That they had, where they couldn't say certain words, they couldn't do certain things, and in reality, it actually made a lot of movies better, because these writers had to come up with different ways to get their point across without using these trigger words that would be get them in trouble by I think it's the Breen Code, actually.
Can you imagine something like that in the modern era? I'm triggered.
Now we just get the NC-17 rating, or whatever, if it's really that bad.
Yeah, not even that anymore. I don't even know the last NC-17 movie that came out.
That's true, but I mean, a Blonde.
A what?
The Marilyn Monroe movie that what's her name did.
That's NC-17.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I haven't seen it, but I know it's NC-17.
Well, for what?
Nudity, sex.
Oh my God! Why am I not knowing this? Oh, who was it? Ana de Armas?
Ana de Armas.
I like her.
She's very good. Very good actress. I love Knives Out. I like both of them, actually, but she was very good in the first one. I wanted to see that movie she did with the Chris Evans.
I heard Chris Evans. I heard it wasn't that good.
Yeah,
okay. NC-17. Wow. What are the odds? But anyway, all right. So let's also talk about nowadays. A movie is determined to be good based primarily on its box office. Scratch that. It's a bigger debate between, does box office success equate to quality movie? Now, back in the day, they weren't, like, movies obviously had to make money and they had to like line people's pockets, but we're not talking about the same kind of money in 1922 as opposed to 2022, right? So it's hard. You can adjust for inflation and all that stuff, and you can, kind of do that. But A, we hate math. B, I can't do math. C, I have trouble thinking.
For example, I think Gone with the Wind is still
the highest grossing film of all time.
No, I don't think it's highest grossing. I think it's like top 10.
Yeah.
With inflation, like still in the top. A movie that was in 1939, if you made it the price that we pay for movies today, it's still one of the highest grossing movies of all time. So I mean, that was a big factor for studios, obviously, back then. But depending on the studio, it was also like a lot of some like Warner Brothers was big on message movies. They sometimes they didn't care about the money, the box office. It was a big plus, but they were willing to make movies that they were possibly sure were not going to make a lot of money, but they wanted to get the message across, especially in the 40s. They did movies like Confessions of a Nazi Spy. They were the first studio to pull out of Germany, when Hitler took power. They were the first studio to say, I don't care about German money right now. I will not release movies in Germany, because I'm against everything that's going on over there.
Right.
They, MGM didn't want to pull out. 20th Century Fox didn't want to pull out of Germany. So like, money's always been big with movie studios.
Money always talks.
What?
Money always talks.
Money always talks. I mean, but the big box office hits really didn't start till Jaws in '75.
So
that was the first blockbuster.
So would you say modern movies if they're not box office successes, they're not successful movies?
So
It's a
it
tough
also
one.
depends on what your definition of a box office success is, because if it makes its money back, plus I'd say if it doubles its budget,
That's what I'm thinking.
it's
Double.
it's
Yeah.
a box office hit, in my opinion. If it just makes its money back, it's okay. It did its job, whatever. But the whole point is it's got to make more than what it was cost to make the movie.
Mhm.
But it really depends on the studio. Some studios think movies should make more money than they do. What's a good example? I think Tron. That's like Tron Legacy. I think ended up making, let's just say, it made more than half of its budget back,
Mhm.
which is a successful movie. But Disney was like, that's not good enough. We're not going to make another one until 10 plus years later, and we're going to recast the whole thing.
And Jared Leto. Speaking of which, and we'll talk about this in a second, franchising. Blade, the original Blade. Did you ever see the deleted ending or the alternate ending for Blade? I'm gonna assume no, because you're
I don't think so.
in the
I
alternate
can't
ending.
remember.
Blade looks over on a building, and guess who he sees there?
Morbius.
Yup. Yeah. So
Who played Morbius?
it was like some in the distance kind of silhouetted type. You can't really see,
Oh,
but it was
all right.
it was almost Morbin time, almost more than 20 years ago.
It
But
probably would have been done a lot better then than it
10
was.
trillion%. So
I just, because you mentioned it, I just watched a week ago. I watched that opening scene of Blade.
Oh, that movie's
still to
fantastic.
this day is so good.
so good. That movie is fantastic. I can always watch that movie. 23 years, I think.
Yeah,
It came out in 2000.
I still think it's top 5 best superhero movies. of all
Oh,
time.
agreed. And
Well,
it's
best top 4 movies of all time.
and it started the modern superhero genre. A lot of people say it was
Yeah.
X-Men. I will say it's Blade. But speaking of the modern superhero genre, franchising. Marvel showed how effective franchising could be when done correctly. Many studios have tried and failed to replicate said idea. DC, I'll say it, they did not succeed. The Dark Universe, which I know you were excited for when they first announced it, and then, yeah. But then every studio was trying to create their cinematic universe. And do you think that franchising has now run it? Do you think it hampens the movie quality because it's so busy trying to do setup? Or do you think having franchises in big worlds to go see makes movies better?
That's a great question, and it's tough to say, because if it's handled by the right people, it could be great. It could be done very well. It's just a lot of these franchises were helmed by, or were just, they chose the wrong people to do them, or to make the certain movies that were. To this day, I still don't understand why The Mummy was the choice to be the first movie in that dark universe.
I think people were familiar with the property just because of the Brendan Fraser
Yes.
movies.
But it just, I don't know. Still don't get it. I really don't. But if you look at Fast and the Furious is Universal's franchise. I mean, that is their bread and butter right now, and it is just being bled dry to the point where a vampire is just like, there's nothing left, man. I can't literally get anything out of this. But it still makes money, and they're going to keep making them until it doesn't make money anymore.
Right.
Marvel had it. Marvel did it the best, and I commend Kevin Feige for that. He had a plan. He picked the right people. Whether that's why am I blanking on his name? Director of Iron Man. Why am I blanking?
Jon
on his
Favreau.
name? Thank you, Favreau. You obviously pick He Who Shall Not Be Named for Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron. But then you find the Russo brothers.
Yeah.
Who were unknowns. I think they had done, I don't know what they had done. I think they might have done, visual effects or something like that. But here they come with Captain America Winter Soldier, and they take over the whole franchise from everyone else, to the point where they were just making all the movies. David Yates in the Harry Potter movies. You look at Harry Potter, Chris Columbus creates the world. Then you go from one director to another director, but then you find David Yates, who directs the final 4 movies. So it's just finding the right people to helm these projects and, having a set plan to do it. Sadly, Dark Universe just didn't do it right, and they chose just stupid idea for the first one. It could have been so much better, but I'm not bitter at all.
Not bitter at all. So let's end with something fun. Give me at least one classic movie recommendation and one modern movie recommendation. Doesn't have to be like the one movie that everybody has to see, but like just something that a classic movie that you thoroughly enjoy, that when people ask, hey, what's a good classic movie? You're like, this one. And a modern one.
I'm gonna go with Duck Soup, the Marx Brothers.
I know. I interviewed the guy who wrote the Marx Brothers biography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen Duck Soup?
No.
There you go. It's a film recommendation.
All right, there you go. Karl Marx. Hey. And then a modern one?
I don't have many modern recommendations. It's a good movie I haven't seen. Barbie. I thought Barbie was very good.
Okay, that's a solid choice. I'm gonna stay away from the comic book recommendations because we'll be here for days. A classic one for me, I'm gonna say The Wizard of Oz.
All right.
And then a modern one, I kind of want to say Inception.
Inception's a great movie.
I love that movie.
I haven't watched that in so long. I got to go back and watch that.
My God,
all of Nolan's films are great.
Yeah, Christopher Nolan. He's another one. Modern directors, he's like the guy. Like he's up there.
I haven't seen Tenet.
No,
that movie got screwed obviously by the COVID pandemic, but I think that movie you should have seen that movie on the big screen. But Dunkirk, Oppenheimer, Inception, obviously the Dark Knight films, Interstellar, The Prestige. All his movies really have been event films.
Oh yeah, like
he's become that event director, honestly.
Well, there's movies and then there's cinema, right? And that's classic and modern. Like there are movies that you go to and you expect you get what you get. Cinema is something that's just so extravagant, like, and it can be in different ways. It could be quality, it could be spectacle. Like Avatar is quality cinema, but it's not reinventing the wheel script wise. It's Dances with Wolves, but they're blue. Avengers Endgame is stylistically it's cinema, but its script is okay, but like it's only okay if you saw 47 other movies beforehand.
Yes.
And then
you're an avid comic book reader.
Right. And then, but like Wizard of Oz it's so breathtaking from just, this is color. This is like the first real big color movie. And, or Gone with the Wind is both. It's a cinematic event in every capacity. So, yeah, see, did you enjoy this topic that I did not give you any prep time for?
Good, very good.
You did a great job with no prep time at all.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
If only I could find a topic you didn't know nothing about, and then we'd see how long the episode would go. But we want to thank you guys for listening. If you guys are looking for more of our content, you can check out our website, themisfitfaction.com. You'll find links to all of our other shows, as well as news, reviews, and articles. We also are on all the social media. If you type in The Misfit Faction or MF Uncensored, we're on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all those things. Make sure you find us, like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff. And we will be back next week with a brand new episode. In the meantime, I'm Paul.
I'm Sean.
And we'll see you guys next time. Hey guys, it's Paul, and the Misfit Faction is looking for your help. We are trying to grow not only our network, but also grow our brands, and the best way to do that is if you guys are looking to start your very own podcast. Maybe you guys have been listening to us for a while. Maybe it's something you guys have always wanted to do, but you're not sure how to get started. If you go to podbean.com/misfitfaction, you guys will get a month of free podcasting on us. That is a gift from us. So make sure if you guys are looking to start your own show, you reach out to us and go to podbean.com/misfitfaction. Also, maybe you guys have your own online business or service that you're always looking to grow, and advertising is a very big part of that. If you guys go to sponsorship.podbean.com/misfitfaction, you guys can get $100 worth of free advertising, again, as a thank you from us to you guys. That's sponsorship.podbean.com/misfitfaction.